Hello, and welcome back to the Librarian of the Rings. Today we are continuing our walk through the Silmarillion, summarizing it with Chapter 2 of Aulë and Yavanna. Welcome back, my name is Ben, I'm the Librarian of the Rings, and today we are back in the Silmarillion, and we are looking at Chapter 2 of Aulë and Yavanna. So if you've followed the other videos in this series, you know that we are going to summarize this just by hitting on the major points, so that this can help you as you're reading the Silmarillion to kind of grasp what you need to out of each chapter. Because when you get to the end of reading a chapter in the Silmarillion, it's really easy to scratch your head and go, what did I read again? I read it, but I'm not sure I understood what happened in it. So in this video, we're going to hit on the vocab words, the major characters that are present here, the major events, and also the major themes that are happening, which we're trying to track across the Silmarillion. Okay, so we are in Chapter 2, and this is the chapter called of Aulë and Yavanna. And it is only a few pages long, but there is a lot packed into it. There's really only two new vocab words that are introduced in this chapter that are going to be important for you to understand. They are Kelvar and Olvar. And Kelvar and Olvar are two of the easiest Elvish words to understand because they have English equivalents, which are just fauna and flora. So we're used to thinking about animals and plants, and that's what Kelvar and Olvar are. Kelvar are the animals, and Olvar are the plants. From the beginning, you're going to know two of the major characters because they're right in the chapter title, Aulë and Yavanna. So Aulë is the smith of the Valar. He is the Valar who is associated with Earth. He's already played a pretty significant role in the music of the Ainur and other events that we've seen in kind of the preliminary stuff in the Silmarillion. But this is the chapter where we really get to know him a little bit. And really the whole chapter kind of evolves around his choices here. Now then there's Yavanna. Yavanna is the spouse of Aulë, his wife, so to speak, and she is the Valar who is associated with living things. So the Kelvar and the Olvar that we've just talked about are really going to come into play with her. That's her main domain and her area of concern. Now, you will remember her from previously that she is the one who created the great trees. So she did that in concert with Nienna, but she's really the driver behind the great trees that give light to Valinor. So a really important character is Yavanna. Now there's a few other characters that you really want to know. Melkor is going to get mentioned. We've already talked about Melkor quite a bit. He is not going to play a role as a character in this story, but the fact that he's there is important in one of the major events that happens here. And then we have Iluvatar. Now Iluvatar we talked about way back in the Ainulindalë, and Iluvatar is basically, you can think of him as the god of Tolkien's Legendarium, the one who is in charge of everything. So the Valar kind of act like gods in Middle-earth, but it's really Iluvatar who's in charge. And as the story gets rolling, Iluvatar is not going to play a very direct role in most of the stories. Only very rarely is he going to show up. And when he does, you're going to know that it's really important. But in this chapter, he actually plays a really important role, and we actually see him engaging directly with Aulë, and we won't really see that kind of interaction between him and a Valar or anyone again in the rest of the story. So pay attention, because I think this is really important and shows us one of the really important themes in the Silmarillion. Lastly, for major characters, we have Manwë. Manwë is the king of Arda. He is the chief of the Valar, and he's going to play an important role here in his conversations with Yavanna as they think about what they were actually hearing in the music. So this whole chapter really revolves around one major event, one kind of catalyst for the whole thing, and that is the creation of the dwarves. So if you've read The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, you're pretty familiar with the dwarves. They play, of course, a major role in The Hobbit and are also present throughout The Lord of the Rings, especially Gimli. And so dwarves are one of the really important races of Middle-earth, but we haven't heard anything about them in the Silmarillion up until now. We know that the elves and men are going to be the children of Iluvatar, and that the Valar came down into Arda in order to prepare it for the children of Iluvatar. And that's one of the major things that they're trying to do and why they are really concerned about Melkor. So what about the dwarves? Well, the dwarves are created by Aulë, and that is the major event that happens here. Aulë is impatient for the children of Iluvatar to come, so he decides he's going to go and make his own, and he makes the dwarves. This is where the reaction to Melkor comes in. He creates the dwarves as these really strong, rugged individuals because he wants them to be able to stand up to whatever Melkor can throw at them. So heat, cold, temptation, whatever, he's going to create these stoic characters. And he does this, but he does it in secret. So that's a really important part. He does it in secret. He doesn't tell anybody else about it. He thinks that he's just doing this under the mountains by himself. But of course, someone does know about it, and that's Iluvatar. And that brings us to the next major event that happens here. We have this conversation between Aulë and Iluvatar. And this is really the most personal moment we get with Iluvatar in the Silmarillion. And it is beautiful. I mean, it is just one of my absolute favorite parts in maybe all of Tolkien's writings, is this conversation between Aulë and Iluvatar. And part of that is it deals a lot with creativity, and that's something that's really important to me, and it's obviously something that was really important to Tolkien. And what comes out of this is Aulë realizes that he's done something wrong, that he has stepped outside the bounds that he has as a Valar, because he has gone and tried to create children, which was only the realm of Iluvatar. And he's done it in secret without telling anyone else, and so only his efforts are put into them. And he volunteers to destroy them. But Iluvatar says, no, I will accept them and adopt them as my children. So really they are the third children of Iluvatar, and they are the adopted children of Iluvatar. And Iluvatar predicts that there's going to be strife between his original children and his adopted children, which of course is going to play out several times throughout the history of Middle-earth. It's going to be a major theme to have the elves and the dwarves in particular have some conflict, and there's going to be some friction there. So you have that event, you have Iluvatar showing mercy to Aulë, and then the next major event you have is this conversation between Aulë and Yavanna. Now remember, they are spouses, and Aulë has not told Yavanna anything about the dwarves. So they aren't their children together, they're just Aulë's children who have now been adopted by Iluvatar. And he comes and he finally decides that he's going to tell Yavanna about it. And she is just floored by the mercy that Iluvatar has shown. Iluvatar has great mercy. But she's also really concerned because she knows that these dwarves weren't made with her input, and so they don't have any love for the Kelvar and the Olvar. They're probably going to go and they're just going to try and destroy them in pursuit of making things themselves. And so she then goes to Manwë, and that's our next major event. We have this conversation between Yavanna and Manwë about how the children of Iluvatar, she doesn't name the dwarves specifically, but they're talking about how the children of Iluvatar will basically be able to destroy the Kelvar and the Olvar, and she wants to protect them. And Manwë is concerned about this until they realize that it's part of the song. And so the music basically controls everything. So realizing that it's part of the song, then we get the next major piece here, which is the foretelling, not really the creation yet, but the foretelling of the Ents and the Eagles. So Yavanna realizes that there will need to be someone to protect, particularly the Olvar, because they can't run away. They can't do anything for themselves. They're rooted in the spot. So Manwë realizes that in the music, they had already prepared for this, and that when the children awake, also there will be these guardians that awake and come into being. And of course, those are going to be the tree shepherds, also known as the Ents. And Manwë also realizes these spirits that will come into the world that are the eagles. Basically, this is when Yavanna and Manwë sing together in the music. That is the eagles, the Kelvar, who are going to be these great spirits of wind and this manifestation of Manwë. So we have this foretelling of these two great classifications of beings, the Ents and the eagles. And so those are all of the major events that take place. So I think there are two important themes, and one is one that we've already talked about, and we're coming back to it now, and that is the difference between solo creation and collaborative creation. So both the lamps and the trees were collaborative creative efforts on the part of the Valar. There were 2 or more Valar involved in each of those. And now we see the creation of the dwarves as this solo event, and it is problematic. Now Iluvatar is going to make it okay in the end, but it is a problem. And so we can see that the best things that are created come out of a collaborative creative effort. And that's a theme that we are going to see playing out throughout the Silmarillion. When someone goes off alone to make something, it often doesn't turn out very well. They need input and they need help from other people. And the second major theme that I see here is the great mercy and grace of Iluvatar. Of course, he represents the god figure, and so that is probably something that we should expect from Iluvatar. He extends this grace to Aulë, and also through Manwë, he extends this grace to Yavanna and to Manwë himself in order to bring the Ents and the eagles into being. So we see him giving his grace to the Valar, being patient with them, and preparing ways for them to both create and protect the things that they have created. And that's it for chapter 2 of Aulë and Yavanna. Again, it's a really short chapter. It shouldn't take you long to read it, but there's a lot to unpack there. And I especially think that you should focus in on that conversation between Iluvatar and Aulë, because there is a lot to understand there. Okay, if you have any questions about this chapter, go ahead and drop them down in the comments, or any thoughts that you might have about it. That's it for this video. Until next time, farewell wherever ye fare. May your ears receive you at your journey's end.